If you look up living legend in the dictionary, chances are you're gonna see a picture of this guy.
Your Spurs.
Clint Eastwood needs no introduction. He's been acting in films since the 50s and he's been directing films since the 70s. He's an immortal icon of the Western genre, starring in Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy as the man with no name, alongside countless other westerns, some of which he directed himself. And that's exactly the type of film we're talking about today, a western directed by Clint Eastwood and starring Clint Eastwood. With that being said, however, Unforgiven is not your typical Western film. It's a revisionist Western, but I'll explain what that means in just a bit. I actually haven't seen any of the 4 films Unforgiven beat out to win Best Picture, so I guess I can't really know if Unforgiven deserved the win. What I can say is that even though my favorite film of 1992 is Reservoir Dogs, I can understand why it wasn't nominated. It would have surpassed all of my expectations from the Academy if they did. But regardless of all of that, if you simply look at the film in question, you get one of the most uncompromising, thought-provoking, and intelligent westerns ever made. Unforgiven is an amazing film that is more than worthy of receiving a Best Picture award, and I'm about to explain to you exactly why. Unforgiven tells the story of William Money, an aged former outlaw long past his gunslinging ways, who decides to come out of retirement, so to speak, in order to kill 2 cowboys who have a bounty on their heads for cutting up a woman's face. He's joined by his best friend and former partner Ned, played by Morgan Freeman, and a young aspiring bounty hunter by the name of the Schofield Kid, played by James Wolvett. However, standing in their way is the sheriff of the local town, Little Bill, played by Gene Hackman, who's hell-bent on crushing all illegal activity under his jurisdiction. That's the story in a nutshell. Sounds like a good old-fashioned good versus evil gunslinging adventure, right?
Not right. Not right? That's right.
Yeah, that's where the revisionist Western label comes into play. You see, Westerns are typically very straightforward films. You got the good guy, you got the bad guy, sometimes you got the ugly guy, you got the mission, you got the girl. It's all very simple and easy to digest. Revisionist Westerns attempt to subvert all of that by presenting a scenario that is much more complicated. The lines between good and evil are blurred, and the entire ordeal is far less romantic with a high emphasis on realism. Now, I'm gonna say this outright, I usually don't like movies like this. I love traditional westerns, I love the good versus evil dynamic, I love the cool action scenes. What can I say? I'm a simple guy with simple pleasures. And yet, the story and characters presented in this film, alongside the various themes that it explores, are so captivating and intriguing, and so well written, that I'm gonna give it a pass. Unforgiven is such a rich film thematically. You could legitimately dissect, analyze, and talk about it for hours. I'm not gonna do this right now, but if you'd like to see a long-form analysis of this film sometime down the road, then let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely considering doing this. For this video, I'll briefly touch on one of the most noticeable themes this film explores, which is the theme of fantasy versus reality. No matter where you look in this movie, you'll find an instance of something being presented in a certain way, only for it to later be revealed as untrue to an extent. Whether it be a slight exaggeration, like how William Money is told that the 2 men cut the woman's eyes and ears off, and yet we see that they didn't. As a matter of fact, only one of them did the cutting, the other one only helped, slightly. Or a pure fabrication, like how the Schofield Kid claimed he killed 5 men in the past, only for him to admit that he lied after actually killing a man for the first time. Speaking of killing, the violent scenes in the film are brutally realistic. We're used to seeing scenes like this. Or this. Or this. But here, we get this.
I'm bleeding, Slim.
Death in all of its ugliness. Another fantasy shattered. The theme of fantasy versus reality is most explicitly presented through the character of English Bob, played by Richard Harris, who also played Dumbledore in the first 2 Harry Potter movies. A little fun fact for ya. When he waltzes into town with his biographer, he boasts about a certain man that he killed a while back, only for Little Bill the sheriff to expose him as a complete liar, and the truth to be far more dirty and unflattering. This is something that happens constantly in the movie, and pretty much all the characters are affected by it. Speaking of the characters, they are all so good, and the actors do an excellent job. Clint Eastwood is his usual intense and squinty self, but this time around he portrays a far more damaged character. For the vast majority of the film, he's far from the badass we're used to seeing him as. Instead, we get a rusty, broken, and sometimes even fragile Eastwood, a long ways away from the mythical nature of his past. Throughout the film, we get to learn more about said past, and we find out that William Munny is by no means a good guy. None of the characters here could be labeled as purely good. They're all flawed, they're all sinners, and they're all morally ambiguous. The closest one to being just pure evil is Little Bill, who finds complete satisfaction in destroying his enemies. Gene Hackman won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for this performance, and he completely deserved it. He was incredible in this movie, one of the most despicable villains of all time, and one that you really love to hate. But even with all that, to Little Bill's credit, he's probably the most honest person in the entire movie. But hey, maybe that's just another reason why we hate him so much. He's the type of villain that you just can't wait to see get his comeuppance. Which brings me to the ending of the film. Oh my gosh, that ending. I'm not gonna spoil it, but what I will say is that even though the film portrays the ending in a non-celebratory, even foreboding way, it's still one of the greatest, most satisfying and badass endings to any movie I've ever seen.
You just shot an unarmed man.
Well, he should have harmed himself.
God, that shit is great. Unforgiven is really, really good. It does have its flaws, of course. The pacing of the film is harmed from time to time. Morgan Freeman was underused in my opinion, and while the film is well made on a technical level, it's nothing too special. But all of those are minor nitpicks. By criticizing and deconstructing the Western, Unforgiven has become one of the greatest Westerns ever made in its own right, and a great Best Picture winner as well.
It's a hell of a thing, killing a man. Take away all he's got, and all he's ever gonna have.
Just like Silence of the Lambs, Unforgiven is one of my personal favorites. It speaks to me on a level that surpasses the vast majority of Best Picture winners, and while I wouldn't call it a masterpiece or one of the all-time greats, it still lands at a very high 14th spot on my list. Bring on the next one. Up next is the 66th Best Picture winner, Steven Spielberg's harrowing, unflinching, and tear-jerking black and white Holocaust masterpiece, Schindler's List. Check back again for the next video of DB Reviews Oscar Madness Marathon and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss a thing. Thank you all very much, and let the journey continue.